Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adohan Jamanze, and I will be your host today. Welcome to Her Network's Women's Month Fireside Chats. Apologies. This is brought to you by BAT West and Central Africa. For those of you who are new to Her Network is a global and lifestyle and inspirational platform that amplifies the voices and the impact stories of women globally. I'm so excited to speak to the inspiring women from BAT, Harvest, and Standard Chartered Bank. Before we start this conversation, I'd like to use this opportunity to thank the BAT West and Central Africa team for making this fireside chat possible. Our topic today focuses on accelerating progress, inspiring inclusion, and investing in women. Our guest speakers today will be sharing their insights and experiences as I chat with them. All month, we've been celebrating women. So what a better way to end the month by having this conversation. Now, I'd like to ask everybody this question. What does accelerating progress mean to you? I'm sure we've been hearing accelerating progress, inspiring inclusion. What does it mean to you? Now, I want you to have this at the back of your mind as we're having this conversation. If you never thought about what it meant to you, hopefully before the end of this conversation, by the time I'm done speaking to these brilliant women, we would have an idea of what accelerating progress means to us. For me, it means investing in women, creating opportunities to excel, and just, once you invest in women, you accelerate progress. I'm sure some of you agree. So, without wasting time, let me introduce our keynote speaker. She is an accomplished professional with over 16 years in manufacturing and consulting sectors, specializing in legal and regulatory compliance, tax management, external affairs, and policy and public policy. She is currently the head of regulatory engagements at BAT, where she actively monitors legal, environmental, and regulatory landscape. She was instrumental in delivering the critical wins on the fiscal stability, moderation, and tax reversals in Nigeria and Niger Republic. Also, the legal enforcement against illicit trade in Ghana and Niger Republic. She is a member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria and Chartered Institute of Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria. It is my pleasure to welcome Ruth Owujaye, the Head Regulatory Engagement, BAT West and Central Africa. Ruth will be sharing her screen with us as she has some presentation slides.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know if you can see me and hear me. Do let me know.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and happy Women's Month, as we say. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the introduction, and really appreciate it. So we have quite a lot to talk about today, and what I'll do is to give a small presentation, but we have women who have so much to share, and my advice is that please bring out your pen and your jotter and take down notes. And then, of course, if you have questions, I'm sure you can throw them in the chat room, and then it can be answered as we go. So I will be sharing some slides now. Also, please let me know. The host, please let me have the sharing rights to the screen here. And then also, while she's giving me the hosting rights, it would be nice to know where you're joining us from. Are you joining us from Lagos, somewhere else? Where in Lagos are you at? If you're in Abuja, you can just drop that in the chat room. It would be good to know who we're engaging with this afternoon. Okay, let me share my screen. Please let me know when you can see what I'm sharing.
Yes, please go ahead. We can see your screen. We can see your screen.
Thank you very much. So I have a couple of slides, and again, what I'll be doing is talking about the topic. And what I've done is just to put a summary here to unleash the woman. Who is the woman? And then basically what we're talking about is are the themes around today. Why do we have to invest in women? And then like the question she asked, Why do we need to accelerate progress? And how do we inspire inclusion? And then really, after we have those conversations, I'll be asking, what should we do differently based on what it is I share? And then we take a closing call. So basically, this is what I'll be talking about in the next couple of minutes. So like I said earlier, the theme of the day is investing in women, accelerating progress, and inspiring inclusion. So why should we invest in women? So, there's some things that, how life is, how God has made things to be. There's some undeniable truths that we can talk about right here. They're not new to us, but it's always good to refresh our minds. So, women investment, is it right? Is it the smart thing to do? What are we talking about when we talk about women and investing in women? But the truth about it is that it is not just right to invest in women. It's actually the smart thing to do. So actually the two are right. So it is right to invest in women and it's the smart thing to do. Why am I saying so? Women and men, these are the genders that we have. Of course, there are some outliers, but women specifically are wired differently. Women see, women feel, we're quite intuitive, and that's really how God created us to be. When we now bring that into now the place of work or even the place of personal lives, you see that there's a symbiosis between us and the men. So because of the way we are wired, we see things a bit differently. We think a bit differently. How we go about doing things are somehow a bit different. Of course, there are exceptions, but that's really how it is. And again, why do we say we should invest in women? Women ensure that we have a sustainable future. So let's even look at the way it is. Women are the one who bring people into the world. However, when it comes to business, women have a knack for multiplier effects. I'm not saying the men do not know how to multiply economies of scale and all that, but a woman has just that inbuilt thing about her, that helps to just shape the world around where she is. Just place a woman in a room, you will see her expanding her horizons across. And we see that around the whole of entrepreneurship across Lagos, across Nigeria, even across Africa. So why should you invest in women? Because women have the knack, to make things better, make things bigger, make you see things differently. And you can imagine just harnessing that force with the forces of the men that we have around the world. Of course, there are no limitations. So that is why women should not be relegated to the background. We must invest in women because women have a way also of bringing things to the table that helps to shape who we are and helps to shape our environment. Also, again, beyond just the economic prosperity, that you say, okay, women are good entrepreneurs, they can manage things better. There's just this conversation across the world, and it's not a new conversation, that there's a need to level the playing field. And why do we say so? I will show you a bit of data because at the end of the day, while I know that people complain in quotes that, oh, women are given all the opportunities and, and all that, but there's data to show that there's a skewedness, even though a lot has been happening in that space, things have improved around empowering women, making women even better leaders. There's a need to level the playing field because usually there's a lot of stereotypes around how things should be done. A woman needs to do that, a man needs to do that, which does not necessarily play in that, in that space when you're talking about how women should go ahead. And then also talking about women, breaking barriers. If you look at the picture I have on the right, always the woman needs to take the stand to ensure, that whatever barriers are put ahead of her, there's always room for her to break them, like we always say, break the glass ceiling, and show what it is that she can do. And we all know that, and depending on, of course, the industry you're working in, for instance, manufacturing, where I have a bit of experience, you just realize that some of those jobs, for instance, are, even though nobody says it, they prefer to put men in the role. They tell you, oh, women cannot do night shifts. We don't want trouble. Oh, she's pregnant and all that. There are just so many of those stereotypes. But of course, we know that in reality, that's really not the case. So we women, and we, of course, with the support of our male peers, need to ensure that we're breaking those barriers. We cannot break all of it at a go, but we can break them one at a time. And of course, there are a myriad of opportunities that have come up now. The world has transformed. We're now in an era of innovation and all that. So there's so many opportunities that women can take advantage of, and be, like I said, beyond the economics of, economic prosperity that women can bring to the table. Looking around and making sure that we're able to bring women, give them the opportunity to show what it is that they can do. And the only way we can do so is by investing in them. What do I mean by investing in them? We'll still talk about that as we move forward. Then the other bit I want to talk about is accelerating progress. The word is accelerate, and then the word is progress. Accelerate means to make something really fast. And then progress is that you're moving, but you need to accelerate it. But what does data say, when it comes to women matter? Because there's people that are moving. I'm not saying women are not making waves. A lot of things are happening around the world that we see that women indeed have been given opportunities. But there's a need to step up to accelerate the progress that we see around, happening with the women folk. Basically, what am I saying about data? At the end of the day, why are we saying give us a bit more opportunities? If you look at data, so what I have here now is statistical showing basically, and this is really about Nigeria now, saying how I mean, in the world of work, how many male or female people do we have in the world of work? As at 2013, there were about 27,000 men fully employed in line with the criteria put forward. And then we have the women about 24. So, you look at it and you say, oh, well, it's not so bad. Women, are gainfully employed. The men too are also employed. But the question around this employment is that how many of these women, or how many of again, that's also what I have on the left, how many of these African women are put in decision-making positions? So it's okay to have women employed. She has a job, she comes back, goes home. But how many of them are really empowered? How many of them are put in leadership positions, to take the decisions that, eventually helps to bring about equity, and bring about inclusion, and I don't know if anybody can hazard a guess. Does anybody know how many women are empowered, who have leadership, who have been given leadership responsibilities here? If you know the answer, you can put it in the chat room, but I have some answers for you. As at the year 2000, there were only 5 women in leadership positions in Africa. Then, over the years, about 21 years later, we can see we are now moving from 5 to 24. Great progress, great progress. This year, there has not yet been, we have 2023 showing about between 22 and 24. So we are somewhere around the 25% mark that we have women in leadership in Africa. But it's a good thing, but it can be better. If you look at it, for instance, now, as at the end of 2023, in Uganda, women, about 38.2% of women are empowered and in leadership positions in the different companies, in the different government parastatals and all of that. Botswana as well, similar, about 38%. Ghana has about, let's say, also 38%. One of the countries leading the pack here is the US at about 40%. But the global benchmark is we're talking about equity, is to get to 50%, So even while these countries are showing quite very good strides, there's still room for improvement. And these are the countries in Africa, and like I said, in the US, that are showing, great potential around, empowering women, allowing them to take decisions, that affects business and affects even other things. But now if we look at Nigeria, where are we? We have, as at 2021, Nigeria was at 20% leaders that are women. As at last year, December, it moved to about 25%, quite a leap, But again, if we look at this, comparing that with the benchmark that we have globally, it should be at 50%. So Nigeria is maybe somewhere around halfway to get into that position. Because why do we want women in leadership? Because it is at those conversations that women are able to give inputs that, bring out this intuitive nature. They see the things that, at the boardrooms and the different ESCO meetings, they're able to contribute positively that, impacts not just the women folk, but everybody all around, So we need to have more women taking more decisions that impact businesses, that impact even personal lives, that impact entrepreneurship. I will give an example. In this case, I have on the right, I have Maya Adeswa. What do we, and basically, why am I talking about Adeswa? I'll tell the story. When we talk about accelerating progress, it's not just saying carry Ruth and just throw her into leadership. You must be able to spot the potential in that person that it is that you want to invest your time in, or else you're just wasting time. And in accelerating progress, you need to have people who are positioned, who see the potential in you. It could be male, it could be female, who push you and say, oh, I think this person can do this and do that. So let me tell the story. When I was working in KPMG, I joined KPMG 2005, fresh from law school, just trying to see, okay, what's the best way to go? Of course, I did well in school and all that. But at the end of the day, I got into the firm, and at my level, at entry level, I think we were about 40. Only at about 7 or 8 of us were women, and I was the only female lawyer that was employed in KPMG at that time. And at the time I joined in 2005, very few women were leaders in the tax and regulatory group at that time. Adeswa was one of them. So I came in fresh, looking at it and all of that. And she called me one day and she said to me, Ruth, I think you can do better, And what she did was to empower me, taking me for different kinds of meetings with her when we were going to have board meetings for different clients that we had to work with. She took me along, and for me, I felt it was really stressful. But she said to me, Ruth, I think you can do better, and I think I know what to do to help you shape this legal skill or hone it in a way. And this woman became, in quote, my sponsor. At every meeting, she was there. Even the work I do, she was guiding me. And at the time, I didn't quite understand it because I just felt, okay, she likes me. But the lady was positioning me for the future because she saw that Ruth had the potential. And what happened? So in that class of or group of 40 people, she mentored me, in fact, became my sponsor at meetings where they're going to take decisions, evaluation decisions about me. She was there to, give context. She was there to, guide, make sure that everything was going properly. And I grew really fast in KPMG. While others I've been taking one step, moving one level or the other, I was doing way, way, way better because she gave me the tools, made sure she kept an eye out, making sure that, I was given the right opportunity. Because truly at that time, it was quite a male-dominated environment. So you can imagine if I didn't have an Adeswa at the time, I would most likely have struggled and I found it maybe difficult, and that is really how she supported me to accelerate, my progress, helping me to become a better leader. Every day I sit down, or every other time, every other day, I sit and I thank God that I found an Adeswa in my life. Do you have an Adeswa in your own case, looking out for you to accelerate the progress? Because we need more of the Adeswas in this world to help shape what it is that the women need to do. Because without, progress is good, but if there's that opportunity for you to be accelerated along with the male folk, why not? We should be given exactly the right kind of attention, the right type of opportunities, similar to how every other person in the room should have been given opportunities. Now, how do we inspire inclusion? Because when we talk about accelerating progress, then there must be active participation to ensure that we're including everybody in the room in different conversations. And when I say everybody, it's the women and also the men. And that's why we talk about diversity. So diversity is not really only, yes, we're in the women month, but when we say diverse, diversity is beyond just the gender. We have the women who come with a different kind of skill sets, which must be recognized in the room. When you have the opportunity, you make sure that you give everybody the platform to share knowledge, give what it is that they have, per time, to go ahead, in life. So diversity is really important because you get to have every form of skill sets that can be used to do better. And then there's also the conversation around inclusive cultures. How can we be inclusive? And this is again where it is that we need leadership, where when we talk about inclusive cultures, we have women and even the men particularly who are open, who foster such cultures. So for instance, 2 instances that I will give in this case. One, when I used to work in Nigerian breweries, we had where the business took a decision to support the women. How? They created or built a baby room or a baby house where women who just had babies, can bring their babies into the office, leave them in that building, and then they're able to get to work. You can imagine how relieved that lady will be. Of course, she will go and put in her best when she's getting her job done. So those, business was able to create that helped, the women even do better at their jobs. Also, for instance, now where I work in BAT, we have what we call a snooze room. What is a snooze room? A snooze room is where, if for instance you need to quickly take a quick nap, you can quickly go there, and take a nap. And the snooze room, of course, is open to everybody. So imagine if, for instance, now, I had a long day. For instance, I had to work on a project. I can quickly go and take a 5, 10, 20 minutes nap. Yes, it's not only for the women, but even the women are also able to, to enjoy that facility. So that's kind of bringing in inclusion, into building a culture of inclusion where you say we want to cater for everybody. Not everybody can go and sleep in their cars, and that really, really helps, to drive the conversations. And of course, the stereotypes. There's always this thing about women. Women only can do this kind of jobs. You cannot work in the factory. You cannot do this. You can't do that. That stereotype mentality needs to change, where everybody is allowed to take the opportunity. Of course, now we have women in the military who can do different kinds of things. That stereotype mentality, we must be conscious about it. And when we say stereotypes, it's not only the men that stereotype. Even the women sometimes will say, no, as a woman, I cannot do this. Why do you give yourself limitations? Don't do that. So avoid stereotypes, understand your bias, and consciously walk around making sure that you avoid stereotypes at all costs. And then, of course, we need to have the inclusion advocates, and this is where we have the guys. We need the men around us, because while we women can support each other, we also need the men folk to be inducted, to be part of this conversation, so that at the point where decisions need to be made, and we have the men who are our advocates, they can say, yes, I agree to this. Oh, let Ruth move on this. Oh, let Bisola do that, and all that. And then sometimes it's just that one phrase or one sentence that could just make the difference for that woman. So again, here we're asking our men to also help, to push these inclusive conversations around us. And then, of course, the women empowerment. While we say yes, we need help from the men, but we women as well also need to do our work. We need to also empower each other. As you empower yourself, empower the women around you. Look for those who you can mentor. Don't be that person. Don't be that person, who will be the detractor. You say, leave that route. Her one life plenty. No. If something is wrong, why not tell her what it is that she's doing wrong, and help her to be a better person, to be a better leader, grow in her career, give her advice. If there's something that you had learned in your own journey, of course, you can always contribute to empowering that other lady who will forever remain faithful to you. And then again, there are so many things that we need to do. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. Let's not just talk about the issues. What are you doing about the issue? Women are not included. The statistics say, we can do better. What are we going to do? We as the women, and also with our men folk, what are we going to do differently? And for me, I have a few comments. So with the women, we need to be a bit more assertive. What do I mean by that? Assets. If you think, and when I say assets, it's not to go and yell at the top of your voice and say, they have excluded me. It's not, I'm not included. No. If you think you have the right skill set, you think there's an opportunity, that you go and ask your line manager and say, I think I can fit into this role. How can you be of help? Go and ask, because if you don't ask, nobody is a mind reader. I think it's only God that can read minds. So go ahead and ask for that opportunity. If it's not your opportunity, it's fine. Next opportunity will come, but please make sure you're talking about the opportunities actively and taking steps to ensure that you are properly prepared for that role. And then I cannot underestimate the conversations around networking. You cannot sit in your small corner in your office and expect that the world will come to you. You need to network with people with like minds, same ambition. What exactly do you want for yourself maybe as a career woman or an entrepreneur? Network with the people who can add value to you, because value does not sit in one place. Sometimes you may even need to move physically, join associations, meet other men, meet other women who will be able to say that, who will be able to eventually give a word to say, I know this person, I think she can, or I think she can't, whatever it is. So network. Don't assume people know. No, nobody will do the work for you. You have to do the work for yourself, which ties down to the other point I'm going to make around personal development. You cannot expect that, you want to become, for instance, director of programs, and then you just sit down with your, I went to school and that's it. You need to get yourself properly developed in the area of your interests. Start to do research. If you need to go back to school, please do so. Go back to school, get the right skill set that helps you become that person you want to be in the future. Draw your career path. Where do I want to be in 5 years? And then plug different activities or personal development activities that helps you, get to that destination. So that personal development is in your hand. You cannot expect your line manager or your other business partners to do all that for you. You need to do it yourself. And then there's a place for self-care in all these activities. Let's not forget that we also need to take care of ourselves. In being driven, we want to show that we are the best at what we do and all that. There's your mental health to protect. There's a family, for instance, for those who are married, to protect. For even the young ones, you need time to also socialize. So there's a place for, in all this, take care of yourself, because if, for instance, something happens to you, what happens to that ambition that you have? So these are things that we need to start to do a bit more differently if you're not already doing so. And then for our men folk, we have a few of the men here, and thank you indeed for joining. But what we have to say are four folds. We need you to listen to us a bit more. I know that, yes, it's a bit difficult sometimes. Sometimes we're not able to pass our messages across, but help us. Listen to us more. Hear what our requests are. When we're asking questions, please give us a listening ear and help us to learn to be better. And then, of course, we need you to be our advocates. When you get into those rooms where that decisions are going to be made, sometimes, again, it is clear that sometimes the woman is the right person to take that position or do that assignment. Be that person that says, give Ruth the opportunity, give Tade the opportunity. Don't be the one that keeps quiet in the room because you don't want to offend the men. Because at the end of the day, we need that diversity in the room to help us do better. And then, of course, like I said earlier, around what happens around women, foster inclusive spaces. I talked about what happens in Nigerian breweries and all that. If there's a need to have any other thing that helps, the woman to achieve her objectives. I'm not saying be that person that say you just want to support women because you like to support women. No, if you are that voice that needs to give that approval, please do so, because you'll be surprised what it is that those women will do eventually to help grow your business. And then, of course, help us lead by example. When you see that people are being discriminated against, and all that, be that person that says, no, don't do that. Don't just keep quiet and say, these women, let me just leave them in their lane. That's not how it should be. And this is really where we need the men folk to support what it is that we're doing. And then, of course, there's so many women making waves. I've put a myriad of people here. In Nigeria, we have so many women doing excellently well. And these women mentor a lot of other women to help them even become better human beings, better at their professions, better at managing, for those who are married, balancing work and life and all that. And every woman in this room who is here for this meeting should aspire to be both, to do so. You don't have to be an Okonjo-Iweala to be able to make an impact. For the few ladies in your office who work on your teams, who work on other things, what are you doing to make them better? How are you sponsoring them? How are you mentoring them to be better women? We can do better. And all I'm saying here is, please, I'm encouraging everyone to take the leaf and see what it is that you can do within your organizations to make women better. And then for me, the last I have here is to say, be that change agent. You don't have to be the woman, like I said, you don't have to be the MD to be the change agent. The woman on your team, what are you doing to help them get better? When they do something wrong, how do you manage them, to ensure that, whatever these issues are, you are fixing the issues and moving and helping them to be better. Be the change agent. Be that one that does it, and helps the woman. And then the last point is here I have is that accelerating, when you want to accelerate the progress of women, it's not just about the morals. Let's just help the women. No, it's not about help. It's about ensuring that the right thing is done at the right time, making sure that our world is just, equitable, and then we're looking at the future. How do we make the future better? So thank you very much. This is what I had to share. We have other women who are also here who will be sharing their stories and answering questions. Please listen attentively. They have so much experience they're going to be sharing with everyone here. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ruth Owujai. That was such a fantastic presentation. I mean, I was taking notes. I think one of the key things that you mentioned that I really, really love is, women are constantly breaking the barriers, even if it's just one step at a time. We need to be more assertive, especially when we're looking to, grow or progress in our personal lives and in our careers. And there's also something that was very critical. We all need an Adeswa. I mean, I'm going to look for more Adeswa after this session. So everyone, I know this is a virtual conversation, but if you really enjoyed Ruth's presentation, please just say well done or thank you in our comments session. Thank you so much, Ruth. Now I'm excited about this conversation. And moving forward, I'd like to introduce our panelists, the very wonderful women that I will be speaking to. Our first guest is a certified diversity and inclusion specialist, passionate about people, and a high performance leader who builds high performing teams. As the director, global diversity and inclusion specialist at Standard Chartered Bank, she consults, designs, and evaluates solutions and programs to deliver global D&I strategies. She has the expertise in diversity business partnering, diversity talent management, and driving inclusion strategies. She has also proven her ability to develop and manage programs to improve organizational employee experience and talent management outcomes. It is my pleasure to welcome Yvonne Alozie Obi, the Director, Global Diversity and Inclusion, Standard Chartered Bank. So while we're welcoming Yvonne, I'm moving to the second guest. Our second guest is an accomplished business leader and gender finance expert. She is the CEO and co-founder of Harvest, a fintech company that provides inclusive finance to African women through goal-oriented savings, impact investing, and credit options for women-led SMEs. She is the global co-chair of marketing for Women in Tech Global Movement and Nigeria's country manager. She is also the chairman of technology at the Nigerian British Chamber of Commerce and a member of the Presidential High-Level Advisory Committee to the President of Nigeria on women's economic empowerment and gender. It is my pleasure to welcome Shalape Akinpelu, the founder of Harvest. And then our final guest is a seasoned security professional who has dedicated her 13-year career in security to safeguarding organizations and their assets. Her background in law has been instrumental in navigating complex situations and developing robust frameworks for ensuring security, compliance, and integrity. She is deeply invested in empowering women within the security field and mentors young female professionals. She has recently established Women in Security Network within her organization, fostering connections through workshops and mentorship programs and building bridges of opportunities for the next generation. It is my pleasure to welcome Bola Olowu, Area Head of Security BAT West and Central Africa. Welcome, ladies. Can everyone hear me? Yes, fantastic. So I'm going to start with a general question for you ladies, right? And the first question that I would be asking is, what does accelerated progress mean to you in the context of gender equality? Ruth has given us a wonderful presentation and explained it in her own clear terms, but we want to hear it from your own experience and your own voice. What does accelerated progress and inspiring inclusion mean to you? So I will start with Yvonne and I'll move to Shalape and then Bola. Is that okay? Fantastic. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction. Ruth, your conversation and presentation was amazing. I think that's the best way that I've heard of a Nigerian woman actually talk about diversity and inclusion and gender inclusion as well. It was great. And I think Ruth actually covered it all around what does accelerating progress actually mean. And accelerating progress is, yes, if you actually check, so I work in the diversity and inclusion space internationally. So I work with the Standard Chartered Bank's global office out of the UK. And from my experience, it's very easy to see a workforce that is 50-50. That's actually not very difficult. A lot of companies have set goals from 5 years ago and they've met them. But when you begin to go to the top, like Ruth said, the decision-making tables, you begin to see that number drop, and it gets smaller as you get to the top. And there are so many organizations where the most senior chairs within the organization are still 20% women, or 15% women, or 25% women. I think some of the best organizations probably have it at 35% women. And so that's where the challenge really is. And accelerating progress really means, what can we continue to do to make sure that we begin to see this as a part of our DNA. We begin to see diversity and inclusion and gender equity and equality as a DNA of an organization. We begin to continue to have the conversation. Allies continue to speak up. Sponsorship becomes a real thing, because women are also over-mentored. Women are overdeveloped. There's so much data that shows that more women are very hungry for leadership development opportunities, but are not given that much chance. So how can we make sure that sponsorship becomes a part of the DNA of organizations? And that's when the acceleration would actually begin to happen. And so Ruth did definitely hit the nail on the head. A lot more sponsorship is required, and acceleration is getting to that place where those decision-making tables get close to 50-50 as well. And that's just what progress looks like for me.
Thank you, Yvonne. So I'll move to you, Shalape. Thank you so much for that wonderful response.
Thank you so much, Ada, and good day, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. It's Women's History Month. It's so exciting to have these conversations, particularly when we see organizations platform this in months like this and beyond now. So I'd like to say special thanks to BAT West Africa and as well as her network. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you for the forward comments, Yvonne and Ruth. It was a delight listening to that. You just made it easier, for the rest of us now. We'll be riding on the rails you've provided. Yes, talking about accelerating progress. There are different ways we can contextualize that. However, from where I stand, particularly, yes, gender, but we know that the challenges are layered, so are the solutions too. However, from whichever lens you want to look at the challenges, they are hyper-connected. For instance, in financial inclusion, in financial access, in the relevance of financial products for women, you can barely talk about the challenges without talking about the inequality in access to education, without talking about the social-cultural norms in most cases that keep women or girl children, back home looking after the younger ones, while their brothers can go to school. You cannot talk about financial inclusion or progress for women without talking about child bride that is still, quite predominant in different parts of Africa, Nigeria inclusive. So it's hyper-connected, as I say, but then there's an overwhelming evidence that gender-based discrimination is a key driver in poverty, and I'd like to look at it from there. It's okay for people generally to look at gender conversation like, oh, those women, they started with the conversation, let's leave them, to have the conversation. And so I always say that it's not a gender conversation, it's a global conversation, it's an economic conversation, it's on all of us. So if you look at poverty, for instance, as I said, so if you look at food security, poor development of the female economy, if you look at healthcare challenges, if you look at, Ruth mentioned particularly, when you look at executive boards of many organizations, right, which we know, right, aside from representation, that it is key to the incomes that these women most of the time, promotion and moving upwards expands your income. It expands how you can also distill that income to other women businesses or your home or your community. So when you look at all of this, it is totally tied to gender-based discrimination in so many cases, either systemic, either, man-built, either internal, either external. The context is, really large. So contextualizing acceleration for women, I'll dimension it in 3 different ways. And one of them is, first off, adopting gender transformative approaches that interrogate these systemic and structural barriers that hinder women's advancement in various domains. I have mentioned different domains. I've mentioned healthcare, for instance, financial inclusion, education, digital infrastructure. There are many layers to it. So how can we adopt gender transformative approaches that even asks, okay, why can't, a woman, for instance, in some places inherit land as a girl child? Okay, if that is the case, because this land is accepted as collateral in many financial institutions, how should the rating or the criteria for credit for male and female then be the same? So we've just got to go back to the basics. Yeah, and there are many examples. We have limited time. I can't really cover all of them. So the first thing, like I said, that is in accelerating progress, is questioning, is interrogating the systemic and structural barriers that hinder women's advancement in various domains. The second one that will follow that, because of course, when you know better, you should do better, is involving designing frameworks and programs that build personal agency. Personal agency starting with community. We are how many on this call now? About 50 or so. It's a community. You can call it a temporal one, but I want to believe that most of the people on our network are the people on this call, and this call will probably, be also syndicated to people in their network community. Being in that community alone is a powerful agency. So we've got to design frameworks and programs that build personal agency. These communities, communities like this are one of them. So in a way, that is dimensioning accelerating progress. What these communities, what they do is they help to build confidence. You situate relatable challenges. It helps with self-esteem. It increases your knowledge and awareness about biases that you can call out. And that way we are accelerating progress. The third one quickly is advocating for greater investment in women as it creates employment. And like I said initially, helps the economy build better. One of the theme for this year, for instance, was inspiring inclusion and investing in her. I think those are 2 magical things, because yes, inspiration is good. Inclusion is key. Ruth really, dwelt on inclusion, which is really key, because you can have a diverse team. You can go on diversity spree, but not have an inclusive team still. The quote that I best use to define inclusion is: diversity is being invited to a party, inclusion is being asked to dance at a party. They are 2 different things. So if it's inclusive enough, then it becomes better to invest. And invest could be capital, it could be time. Capital most importantly, because its evidence has shown that 90% of what women earn goes back into their homes, into their communities, and into the larger society. So then it becomes an economic imperative, and it helps us boost the GDP, local economies, and national economy. So I think, I've been able to quickly answer 3 dimensions where I see what accelerating progress mean in action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shalafa. You really took us to the economic side of it, and you really went looked at the critical aspect of it. Thank you so much. Bola, please.
Hi everyone, and thank you, Ada. It's so good to be here and to speak with everyone today. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. The great thing about being the last speaker is that I can write off what everyone has said and just repeat it again and still be able to pass on the same message, but without sounding like a broken record or having to mirror what everyone has said. My only contribution to this is I'd like to keep it very short. The data speaks for itself, and the only message I'd like to reemphasize is 2 things really. One, commitment and intention. The data again speaks for itself. We're in an era where every organization has made diversity and inclusion an agenda, and part of their mission statement as well. But the question is, are we just trying to tick a box, and in terms of achieving an objective, or are we really, really committed to it? We can see how the world has evolved, and you see that the goalposts always continuously shifts from time to time. So how are we continuously, as individuals, how are we intentional about closing these gaps, about breaking down these barriers? How are we being intentional in terms of developing strategies to achieve gender parity? Now, the most important, again, finally, I'd just like to talk about just one thing: education, awareness, until it becomes second nature, because we cannot, no matter how hard we try, deny the fact that a lot of people are still unaware about the message in itself that we're trying to pass across. It's not a race, it's not a competition. We just want primarily one thing. We want to be seen for what we are, who we are. We want to be heard, we want to be respected, we want to be treated the same way as everyone else. How are we committed to ensuring this, that we're driving the level of awareness in a different way? How are we changing our strategy again, and not ensuring that we're not rinsing and repeating every year the same programs that we previously implemented, and we're just carrying on a legacy, for lack of a better way to interpret that. But again, I just like people to focus on that as well, while we are intensifying our efforts as well, to drive this agenda. How are we renewing our commitment as well? How are we constantly developing dynamic strategies, and how are we expanding education and driving awareness in the world? That's it.
Thank you so much, Bola. I loved how you took that from the educative point of view, right? Because it's absolutely important. And then it's not just a rinse and wash, like you said, every year, and we come back and have the same conversations. It's also about making sure that the conversations we're having are now actionable, and we start working towards them. Right. I'm still going to stay with you, Bola, because my next question is directed to you. Right. How can companies and organizations create opportunities for more inclusive workplace and build supportive systems, for women? How can we do that?
Okay, I'm going to answer that systematically. The first question is, what do women want? Until that question has been answered, we can't hack it, right? So the first question is, what do women want? And really, most of us in this room right now, we're women. So please feel free, to correct me if I'm wrong, or raise your hand, or put in an additional comment, in the chat box. But what do we want? We don't want a lot. Women are relatively low maintenance, right? What we want is flexibility. We want meaningful work. We want equal opportunities for growth, for progression. We generally feel like we can only get ahead in life generally by making certain sacrifices. We are often stuck in conflicts between balancing work and family, and it should not be so. We're ambitious, and it's a great thing, but we want to feel connected to a higher purpose. We want to have a sense of belonging, just like everyone else. That's the what. Until that, does anyone else have any additional comments or any contradictory opinion? But that's what I've generally seen from not just research, but interacting with people, companies, as well. Then the question is the why. It's in every company's mission statement, really. We want to have a productive and collaborative work environment. That's it. Then there's the how. When we've answered these two questions, surrounding the what and the why, how do you how do you go about this? So we want equal pay. You're implementing different, programs. Everyone's placed on the same pedestal, across board. You're creating a safe place to work for women. You are implementing reporting mechanisms, in place. You are supporting work-life integration. I work in British American Tobacco as well, and Ruth has spoken about the snooze room. She's spoken about, we have another room on the same floor, which we call Mother Moments, where nursing mothers can go and do their business, in there while at work without having to scamper, back and forth or shuttle while in the midst of important meetings, so that they also don't feel left out. You can sit in there and attend the meeting, while you're still doing your business. We're talking about diverse leadership, and representation, as well. The most important thing is that, yes, every woman wants a seat at the table, but how do we maintain that seat at the table, as well? That's the role that these companies, all of these companies and employers, have to play. Once they answer the what and the why, the how is pretty much a walk in the park. Because if you don't listen to the people and understand their needs, then you're not able to solve the problem.
You see why I said I was very excited about this conversation, because there's just so much to learn from all the women. I love how you highlighted the how and the why, because it's very, very important that these things are taken into consideration, because companies evolve as well. So, the mission statement you might start with might not be the same mission statement maybe 5 years down the line. Like you mentioned, everybody's talking about collaboration and building a collaborative environment. Thank you so much for that. I'm moving to Yvonne. So, Yvonne, I've been reading so much. I've been reading up your profile, and you look so young. First of all, you look young and very beautiful. But I was wondering, how did you get to the level of a director? I'm sure all of us are curious. We want to know, because we have a lot of young women in this conversation, and we can definitely learn and get inspired by your journey and your story. So please, can you tell us? Because I'm curious. I need that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. It's quite an interesting story. But before I go ahead with my story, Bola, thank you so much for what you said. It was great to hear that yes, we definitely need to listen to people before we can even understand what it is that they need. And yeah, so my journey, I started my journey. I was born in Nigeria. I was actually born in an eastern city in Nigeria, which is practically where I grew up most of my teenage years as well. And then I moved to Lagos, and I started out my career in Nigeria. I started out my career in tech, in product management, to be specific. Tried a few things as well before I got into product management, because product management was relatively new in 2016, 2015. And I just knew that I wanted to, I grew up watching my mom go to work, because my mom used to work for the Ministry of Education, and she used to travel a lot. My dad is a medical doctor, and both of them used to travel a lot. My dad used to treat the governor of Imo State at that time. And every other woman around me was not very impressive. And that's also because of where I grew up and where I lived. But my mom was just the only one that I saw really working. And it made me feel like, I think as an adult, this is what I want. I want to be able to go into the office. I want to be able to have a career. And my parents did everything they could to make sure that we also got great education. We would spend an hour going to school in a very small city. That's to show you how far we lived from the school. It was a type of situation where many people who were in the school lived around the school, because the school was in a very fancy estate, but we lived 1 hour away from the school. But that's how much my parents were willing to sacrifice to get us very good education. And that's probably what kind of like followed me through my journey. But I also started my career very early, because I got to a point in my life where we don't have something called an apprenticeship system in Nigeria, which might be part of our economic problems, especially for women. In the UK, for example, and even in the US, there is something called the apprenticeship system, where people who don't have the access to who don't have financial access to formal education can actually work and combine that. And so things took a different turn for my family at some point, and so I had to find a way to fend for myself. So I finally was able to combine the two. So I was doing a part-time study and also working. So that got me into the workforce really early. But what was the defining moment for me? I think the defining moment for me was after 1 year of not knowing how I was going to get into the workforce. My mom tried to get me into civil service. I was like, this is not working. I don't really like it here. I realized that I didn't know if I was employable. I didn't know if I had skills. That was the first realization that hit me. What does a good CV look like? And that's when I started my journey to actually start learning what is a career? How do people actually build a career? What are the different types of jobs that exist? People don't know. The only thing people know is there are people called the teller at the bank. People don't know all the types of jobs that exist within a bank, for example. People don't know that there are things called career paths that they can build. They just know that I go to school. What do I do after school? There is no career preparedness for people. We have a guidance and counselor, but they practically just tell you how to behave in school. There is no career development for young women. There is none of that. I realized that was a very huge gap that existed, and I had to figure it out. I had to actually decide, wow, so I have to build a career, but how do I do that? What are my skills? What are my passions? And I had to start doing all of this on my own, which was another mistake. Looking back, I probably should have gotten a mentor at that point, or a coach, because I had so much trial and error. But within every trial and error that I had one goal. I wanted to be the best at what I was doing within when I was doing it. So if what I was doing was an executive assistant role, which I tried, I wanted to be the best executive assistant there was. If what I was doing was project management, which I also tried, I wanted to be the best project manager there was. I just needed to stay in a job to pay for my education. That was all I knew. Whatever I took, I was going to be in a job. And then after 3.5 years of working project management roles, I decided to combine that with running an organization that was going to try and close the career development gap for women as well and get women into tech, because I realized people who understand tech have the power, and that's the truth. And then men saw the opportunity and they went into it. And then women didn't. But I also realized one of the ways that we can close the gap, especially for learning and educational opportunities, is to start understanding how to leverage tech. So things like remote working, flexible learning, ed tech as well. These are ways to actually really accelerate the kind of advancement and progress that we're talking about. And so I started working on that. And that work kind of increased visibility for me. It opened doors for me. It gave me an international lens to understand diversity and inclusion better. And I took that to the next level. When I was doing my bachelor's, decided to go for my master's. And again, as a woman, I was also newly married at that time. I could not afford to travel abroad to do this master's because I was also working and self-funding. So I went for a more versatile opportunity, which was seeking a distance learning opportunity. And I got into a hybrid program within the UK while I was living in Lagos. But the moment that also changed my life and my career was the choice of institution I decided to bank with. So at that point in my life, I was working for an organization an organization in the US, an edtech organization in the US, working on career development opportunities as well for women and minority groups around the world. And I wanted to start my master's. So I was earning in dollars, spending in Naira, but needed to pay my master's in pounds. And I decided to open an account with Standard Chartered Bank. I'm not selling Standard Chartered Bank here, but I just want to say how financial inclusion changed the game for me. Because what that did for me, which is very good for what Sholape is also doing, is that I was able to do cross-border payment very seamlessly. And that was the only way I could pay for my master's. And that was the only way that I could spend in Naira, but also pay for my master's in pounds. That changed the game for me completely. It really did. I feel like that moment changed my life. And I saw how I was treated as a female client with the bank as well. And then after I continued my journey, something told me, you know what, Yvonne, you've gained all these skills, you've done a master's, it's time to actually go into the diversity and inclusion space, the organizational development space, and do this in corporate. But I didn't want to work within a Nigerian company because I had already started earning in a foreign currency. I wanted to continue that. And then I started applying for jobs overseas. As a woman living in Nigeria, I just started doing it. People were telling me, you're not a software developer, you're not a software engineer, you're not a designer, you're not a product manager. Why are you doing this? And I was like, because I can. And I started applying. And after 6 months of rejection and incessantly applying, I got a job as a senior manager for diversity and inclusion at booking.com, and all relocation paid, moved me and my family to Amsterdam. And that was the beginning of it for me. And then after that, 2 years after that, needed to move to the UK and started applying again. And so I started applying for more jobs. And that's how Standard Chartered happened as well. And so I've been with Standard Chartered since then. But Standard Chartered was also a no-brainer for me because, one, they were a great bank that I was working with, that I was a client of. They have a serious leadership commitment to diversity and inclusion. And it's been great being here. But I think that everything that surmounts my story is, as a woman, I always identified what the limitations were. I found ways to leverage technology for both my skill and for my development as well. So many women are averse to flexible learning opportunities, but that can do wonders for you. I chose a great financial partner. And where you bank is very important. How you grow your money is important. When you choose, there's a time to invest in yourself, and there's a time to save money, and there is a time to invest in property. Choose it wisely. I chose investing in myself over building a side business. And that investing in myself has pulled off in so many ways. Now I invest in side businesses because I've done that. And then bet on yourself. I took a bet on myself, and I was like, I will be that Nigerian woman who is not in tech that's going to be hired and move to another country and grow in the ranks of being a director, and I will do that. And I took that chance on myself, even when other people said no. So that's the fastest way I can summarize my story.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much, Yvonne. So that for me, that's a very inspiring story, because one of the things that stood out for me was the fact that you had to always put your mind to whatever job you had at that moment, even if it wasn't passion driven. So you just kept using that to keep climbing till you got to the stage where you are. And I think that's something that is very important for us women to take into consideration, that we might not start with what we are passionate about, but the constant determination to just keep climbing and excelling in whatever is in front of us at that moment to get to the next stage is absolutely critical. Thank you so much. You also talked about the financial part of it, right? And which is one thing that I'm actually excited about. So which is what brings me to Shalabe, because we talked about the finances, and with your organization, Harvest. I was reading and I saw with over 30,000 members, you have offered capital, loans to women-led SMEs. Can you share the vision for your organization? Talk to us about the vision, including even empowering women, towards long-term success and growth.
All right, thank you so much. Capital is key, and I think that's it's established. Even in the required resources for production, capital is essential. It's the lifeblood of everything. However, capital itself is not limited to financial capital alone. And it's from that, like they call it like 4 dimension of wealth that we look at, stewarding capital at Harvest. And that is because, for years, for centuries. I authored a book around this, talking about women and money, our perspectives about money, our relationship with money. Trust me, from someone at the front row of operating, of being leading a product alongside a team, the relationship with money from a female perspective is totally, totally different from a male perspective, right? And so what Harvest does, right? Our vision is to ease the access to, firstly, relevant and secondly, affordable financial services for financially underserved and excluded women in Africa, starting from, Nigeria. So, while focus has been, or the one that is most tangible has been the financial capital, which, as it said, over 40,000 members in the community actually, which, as it, mentioned, automated savings, affordable credit. We started with smallholder female farmers. We expanded into other women-led businesses, impact investment. Beyond empowering women with this capital, we are very, very big on financial literacy skills. And that is because capital is key. Financial capital is key. It is crucial, but it is not enough. As of today, we have over 200, million people in Nigeria alone. There is no way, even if you deploy, 1 million each to everyone, right, without accurate or without sufficient and even customized, right, financial literacy, that money is gonna, like, people will just carousel, the money will go around and then give people another 6 months or 1 year. Most likely the bulk of that money would not be traceable and would not have really, really achieved much. So financial literacy is key. And so we focus so much on that in our community, in conversations like this, in partnerships as this, because we believe that what that does is that it gives confidence. Yvonne mentioned that there is a time for you to invest in yourself. There is a time that is personal development. There is a time to, invest in different asset classes. There might be some times that you need to take credit to, accelerate whatever you're building. So you've just got to know and have this, friendly and knowledgeable relationship with capital, both financial capital, relational capital, social capital, and all forms of capital to maximize its use. And these are the things that, Harvest focuses on. We believe that by investing in women, we can unlock their potential and create a ripple effect that benefits their families, the communities, and the world at large. We all know that most of the time, a mother, for instance, is a child's, first teacher, and the home is a child's first school. So if stereotypically we have said that women are the nurturers, women are, the caregivers, and these same women do not have adequate knowledge in financial literacy, what then gets passed, to the children? So that's why, at Harvest, we are big on the products. We are really, really huge on products. If you, experience or download Harvest, you'd see that we are very, very product-led. But beyond that, we are also focused on advocacy as this and on building competence and capacity for our women through financial literacy.
Thank you so much, Rapper. For me, I think it's very, very imperative that we encourage women financial literacy. And thank you for what you do at Harvest, because even I started taking financial literacy classes as well, because I wanted to also just, like you said, the spending habits of a woman is different from that of a man. So I think it's always going to be very different. Thank you for highlighting
not
that.
even spending alone, the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the relationship with money.
Yes, the relationship.
Yeah.
Relationship is spending,
absolutely.
making it, preserving it, transferring it, having enough of it. A lot of women feel guilty when you talk about wealth. for instance. You know, there's this self-righteousness, like, oh, I don't want to have a lot of money. Let my man just have it. You know, there are just different dimensions to it. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think that was a very, very important point for me. So moving on, I'm moving to you, Bola. So in Ruth's presentation, she also highlighted the percentage of women in leadership. And she highlighted at least the statistics for the last 10 years and the growth. While I was reading BAT's website, I came across the ESG targets for 2025 to increase the proportion of women in management roles to 45%. Has that target been achieved? And then what are the steps that we're taking towards it? Because I'm sure we have female business leaders on this conversation who can also, and also male business leaders as well, who can also maybe learn one or two from that.
Okay, I'm going to deal with the BAT piece first. No, we haven't achieved the 45% target, but I'm saying very confidently that as at the beginning of this year, we're tracking very well at 38%. Women currently occupy 38% of the management roles as at, with the current stats that we have. So we're still on track to deliver as of 2025. As I speak, 3 of our 9 members of the senior leadership team are women. So we are adequately represented, although the goal is to still increase the proportion of women in management roles, to 45%. BAT generally, fosters an environment where everyone can thrive and contribute. So we have 6 pillars, ESG pillars, and one of our values is called being truly inclusive. It's not just a mantra, it's a way of life, over here. We're very committed to delivering, a positive social impact, as well. We see that 45% mark as feasible, and the aim is even to surpass it, and not just stick to a 45% target. A couple of weeks ago, we launched something across the sub-Saharan Africa area, which BAT West and Central Africa also belongs to. We call it WISA, and it's women in BAT Sub-Saharan Africa. So we've basically pulled all of the women together to say, first of all, we're creating a platform for everyone to be able to network. We get to know each other. It's not good enough that we're just working, in the Sub-Saharan African area, and we don't even know each other except if we communicate by email or we use the company intranet. It's not enough. So how can I get to know this person? How can we interact? How can there be some sort of knowledge sharing, as well? How do we, in positions of senior leadership, identify opportunities, for intervention as well, for improvement amongst the ladies? It's a very, very new initiative. It's growing, but we can see a very positive trajectory, as well.
Oh, so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Bola, thank you. I think 38% is still a good number. So we're still moving. Thank you for that. So, you mentioned, also building the network and having the women in Sub-Sahara come together, and just also BAT creating different measures for inclusiveness. I'm gonna come to Yvonne as a global diversity and inclusion specialist, right? One of your roles is to design and evaluate diversity strategies. What are the best practices, right, you would say that you have created for an inclusive and diverse work environment, in the global context, because you work with you work with a multinational. So what are the strategies that you have created or designed for an inclusive environment?
Thank you for that. So yes, the first thing that I would really say is making sure that there is leadership commitment, and making sure that leadership commitment is not lip service. And there are different ways that this is done. So I like that you talked about BAT having, their ESG targets and goals very clearly externally communicated. So one of the ways to definitely have leadership commitment is by externally communicating your targets. It's a big thing globally in civilized countries and Western countries. ESG is also a big thing. And so there are so many bodies. For example, in the UK, there's the Women in Finance Charter that holds leaders, CEOs of Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 and Fortune 50 companies accountable. And they say, okay, what are your targets? Is it 35% women by 2025? What are your targets? And you have to externally communicate this. And for a large multinational, for example, for you to externally communicate a target, it means it has gone to the board for approval. And that means somebody is going to be held accountable for it. Someone is going to be held accountable for, okay, what happens when we don't meet this target? And that's where members of the diversity and inclusion team like myself, we come out and say, oh, let it not be the junior diversity and inclusion manager or project coordinator that's going to lose their job, right? If this is happening, if this doesn't go right. So it is then my job, or someone at least within my role in any organization, to then push for and advocate for a senior sponsor. And that's where sponsorship of diversity initiatives, diversity and inclusion initiatives are very important. So someone has to be able to say, I'm going to put my I wanted to say neck on the line, but I'm going to really put my weight behind this and say, do you know what? Regarding this particular target, you can hold me accountable. And that's when we need someone at that top. So I'm sure maybe there's someone in BAT that's at that senior level. It's best if it's also an ally. If it's a target for, if it's a gender target, an ally for someone who is not a woman, a man. If it's a minority ethnic target, then it has to be someone who is not of a minority ethnic group. It's best if it's an ally, because for example, I know that we're on this call, we're talking about women, but I mean, men need to be here as well. A lot of them need to be here as well. And so we don't end up continuously preaching to the choir. And so that's why making sure that you have a sponsor for these initiatives, these targets are great. So leadership commitment is one step. And then following leadership commitment, whenever I design these initiatives, then I think about how do we cascade? How do we then bring it down? How do we then make the people leaders, the middle managers also feel responsible for delivering this? Because at the end of the day, yes, there is senior leadership accountability for this, but how do we, yes, there is the diversity, right? But how do we make sure that people leaders are creating inclusive environments for their teams? So there is a larger organizational cultural context that we know, but there are also subcultures within teams. There are teams where it's the manager that really sets the tone, and you find out that their experience might be slightly different from the experience that you think that the organization has broadly. So how do you then make sure that your people leaders are going to be responsible for making sure that they're setting up a diverse interview panel, that this is on their metrics probably as well to, rate their performance. They are taking, part of the inclusive leadership training programs. They're taking sexual harassment programs, or just really any kind of learning that can improve their ability to be a better and inclusive leader. So that's another way. In my organization, for example, we have this in something called a scorecard and a metric that people actually have to take and make sure, okay, have I met these targets? And then another key initiative is, we all know the diverse hiring initiatives, but have you ever heard of a recruiter coming back to say, well, not enough women applied for this role? Then, what did you do to make sure that you are partnering with communities that actually speak in the same language that women do? Have you looked at your job descriptions to make sure your job descriptions are not asking for things that don't offer flexibility? what are you doing to make sure that, you know, you're partnering with a her network, for example, to advertise your roles to their community? You're partnering with communities that actually cater to women and their needs. So diverse hiring practices is another thing, and making sure that this is something that all your recruiters are trained on, and they understand that if I put up a job application and 60% of people that apply for the application are women, and then I end up shortlisting and then it flips, then there is a problem. Some recruiters don't know that. Some recruiters don't know that the statistics from your attraction process should also align with the statistics from your selection process. So some recruiters are not upskilled to that level. They don't understand that. How can you provide them with solid training that teach them that? And then just riding on the wave of what Bola said about listening to understand the lived experience. So lived experience is such a thing in the global context, because we need to begin to understand that people, especially people from groups that have been marginalized for so long, have a story to tell, and they actually, you can't assume you understand what they're going through until you actually listen. Not all women are the same. Some women want flexibility. Some women want to do jobs that matter more than they want the flexibility. So you need to actually understand what are the lived experiences of my people, and you need to listen to them. One of the key ways that I prefer or I recommend listening to your employees is forming something called a working group. So I make sure this working group is led by that executive sponsor who has put his name behind the targets, who has put his name behind, see, if BAT does not meet this 35% target or 38% target, hold me accountable for it, right? And this person is sponsoring that working group. And the working group is made up of people from the community, diverse women, because there are all kinds of women. A Muslim woman's experience might be very different from a non-Muslim woman's experience. And you can't tell her otherwise. What she understands and what she needs and wants in her life is not the same with what you want. Doesn't mean she's less of a woman, right? So you need a diverse pool of women as well to understand what their lived experiences are and come up with an action plan. So what is the problem statement? What are we experiencing here at BAT? And what is the action plan? And then you don't need to make the working group responsible for delivering on the action plan. Then you need to partner with the specialists within the organization that can deliver the action plan. That's it. So if it's hiring more women, or then you need to partner with HR. You need to partner with the resourcing team to make that happen. If it's talent mobility, maybe women are saying, you're developing us too much, but you're not giving us opportunities, stretch assignments, all of that. Then partner with the talent team. If it's sponsorship, then partner with an organization to run a formal sponsorship program. Put your money where your mouth is. And that's why you also need that strong sponsorship from the top, because opportunities like this and programs like sponsorship programs, they need money. They need money. You don't just shuffle leaders within the organization and give them this extra responsibility to sponsor people. Sometimes you need an organization to come in and do it right. And if you're going to do that, you should be ready to put the money there and see the return on investment that you get from there. So these are some of the opportunities and some of the initiatives that I usually champion in my current organization and other places I've worked, and some of the best practices as well I've seen within the industry.
Thank you, Yvonne. So I loved how you broke it down, because I mean, you gave us a bigger scope or a holistic view of how diversity and inclusion works. And I really like that, because some of the points that you shared, I didn't even think of that angle. Thank you so much for that. So I know you broke down the different aspects, right? And then you came back to the financial part of it as well. And I will direct my next question to Sholape. So how can we amplify our voices on inclusivity? You know, proposing solutions for sustainable growth of the female economy. How can we amplify our voices?
All right, very valid question, particularly now that there's a lot of buzz around digital gender divide. To contextualize, when we talk about technology, as a technology as leverage, technology as, a tool for capital, technology for scaling solutions. I always say that women need tech and tech needs women. So there really is no way that we can talk about inclusivity, that we can talk about accelerating progress for women. And then, if we come to this conversation and we don't discuss how technology affects all of that, it would be incomplete. And so, very valid question. How we can use technology to drive inclusivity? Firstly, technology, solutions, its products need women from diverse backgrounds to build wholesome products. And I can go on and on to establish some examples where we've had major product fails or some market recalls because, even tech giants develop products that were released into the market and didn't have or did not have enough women-oriented features. Let me characterize that with Apple. I think it was 2014 when they released, I think it was Apple Health or so. And then, you could pick so many things, temperature, stress, hormones, you could do all of that. But then it wasn't able to track what half of the entire world population, women, 50-50, of productive age encounter every month, and that's a monthly flow. And so there was a major backlash to say, really, you developed this for how many months? Had R&D teams, and then I think it was traced that there were not enough women, on that project. And so that's why I always say that technology itself, it needs women for diverse thoughts, for richness in the build, and of course, women need technology. Yvonne mentioned to say that, while she was seeking for jobs, and it's also stereotypical, not all the time. That people are saying, oh, you were not a software engineer, you were not, because a lot of people have seen those paths, as paths that could help you earn really, really competitively, that can give you location freedom. And in many cases, they truly are, right? When you follow with the right intent. And recall that she said that even when she was an executive assistant, she wanted to be the best. At every role she found herself, she wanted to be the best. Just to quickly correct that, these days, some people have them banding tech and say in 6 weeks you'll be earning, 7-figure, that like it's some form of lotto going on there. Whatever you do, and I always tell people, if you're a sloppy HR person, if you like crossing to tech, you're still going to be a sloppy person in tech, right? So women need tech too, from a financial perspective, quickly, because it's proven that, some of these rules truly, as I like to call it, some ways they are like, they can break generational curses. Because by the time you sit conveniently at home in Lagos, and then you're earning, in FX, some really, really nice, I mean, before you know it, you're doing, if you're smart and you have the right financial literacy, right, you're breaking generational curses and you're building wealth for the next generation, really. And so, yes, women, we need to see more women move from vulnerable roles, right, into, into roles that can future-proof their careers. And tech is one of those roles, right? And so that inspires inclusivity. And one of the ways that we've displayed that with Women in Tech, by the way, is a global non-for-profit, which, I lead the Nigeria chapter. In the past 2 years, for free, at no cost to participants, we've trained over 2,000, girls and women, and seen them, transition into, tech roles. And that's how you inspire inclusivity, because thirdly, representation matters, right? If you, we had a roundtable yesterday, and someone mentioned that they went to a high school in an urban area, in urban Nigeria, and they were asking the girls, It was an all-girls school. So they were asking, who wants to be an engineer? No hands raised. None. No finger in the air. Who wants to be a nurse? I love nurses, by the way. They are cute. It's a really good, beautiful profession. We had many hands because again, these girls see many, they look around and they see females, female nurses, and then so representation matters. The more women that we can scale into these technology sectors, for the first thing that I mentioned, which is, robust creation of products and ideas. Secondly, to aid them into earning more and then expand their income. You cannot save what you do not have. You cannot budget 0, 0, 0, right? And thirdly, for representation, because representation does matter, really. So we need to inspire a lot more, inclusion and inclusivity in technology itself. And yes, we are gradually moving there. Conversations like this, actions like Women in Tech are done. For instance, and I was happy to hear that, I think it was Bola that mentioned that they now have like a hub where, staff would interact globally. That's beautiful. Women in Tech, as at today, have over 200,000 members globally. And then if you're a community member today, there's a hub that you get signed on to. So you're a community member in Nigeria, you want to go to, let's say, Yugoslavia, for instance, right? You just need to search for members, on there. So it's really fostering this across border, beyond the border engagements, which we need to see more of amongst women, particularly to inspire inclusion. Thank you.
Can I add something, Ada? Please,
Yes.
just something really quick. I love what Sholape said. I think one thing I also want to say is it's in fact that globally right now, there's something called the sunrise roles and the sunset roles. And Sholape is very right that the sunset roles are either being revamped to the sunrise roles, but you can't depend on your organization to revamp your skills for you. You have to think, is my skill going to be retired? Is the sun going to set on my skills and I would not be able to move to the next step? One of the things that I did for myself is, even though I said I don't want to have a tech career, it didn't mean that I didn't need tech skills. So I was working for a remote company, an ed tech company, and to work remotely, I needed a bunch of tech skills. I needed to analyze a bunch of data for my learning programs that I was designing. So having tech skills are still very, very important. It may not necessarily mean that you take on a tech role, but having tech skills are very, very important and doing what you need to do regardless. So I wanted to add that part. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. That was fantastic. So we're almost there. We're rounding up with our final questions. But I just wanted to say to the audience, if you have any questions, please just write your questions in the comment section, and I would ask our gracious speakers. Bola, you've built a successful career in security, a male-dominated field. You've also established the WIS, that's Women in Security, in your organization to promote inclusivity. So what strategies have proven very effective in overcoming that gender bias, right? Can you share an example of when you had to navigate through a challenging situation and how you emerged stronger?
Okay. Okay, I'm going to answer first. I'm going to address the gender bias issue. The question is, have we overcome gender bias? No. It's a daily struggle, right? Every day we're still fighting, to have our voices heard. Nonetheless, how am I powering through in spite of this? Just very brief history. I have a background in law. At some point, I was a budding young lawyer and I was starry-eyed. That's the only thing I wanted to do. Anyway, at some point, I hit a brick wall and I realized that there was a very low ceiling at that point in time. And I decided to switch careers. Somehow, I ended up in the bank and I got posted to the legal department. My first day at work, I'm not top generation bank. Anyway, walked into the legal department and I asked to speak to HOD and I said, here I am reporting for duty. Happy to work here, yada, yada, yada. And he took a good look at me and said, you're in the wrong place. And I said, okay. Can you direct me to the legal department? And then he says, no, this is the legal department. Look around. Do you see any female head here? There's a reason why. I think you better take this back to HR. We might have a conversation with them later. But this is not the place for you. And I said, okay. So I took my papers and myself, I went back to HR, and they said, oh yeah, there must be a mix-up. They'll have a conversation, yada, yada, yada. And I ended up being posted somewhere else. Anyway, needless to say, I was there for months before I said, this is not the place for me. I need to go where I feel welcome and wanted. Somewhere along the line, I took a break from everything and I found my way into security. I stumbled into it purely by accident. And somewhere along the line, I discovered, hey, I'm pretty good at this. What can I do, to make myself, to plant my feet firmly as well, develop my career, myself, and a whole lot of other things. One, I'm bold apart from being confident. Make yourself heard, as an individual. Different strategies, yeah. Let your work, most importantly, speak for you, especially in rooms that you cannot enter. Take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way. Whenever I see that, there's a role that needs to be filled, and people say, yeah, there's an engineer that you require certain skill sets, to fill in that role. That's the one I'm gunning for, best believe. And I eventually walk away from there, not just with leaving an important message behind, but saying that it can be done, right? I don't know the first thing about engineering, but again, that's done and dusted. Talking about, the Women in Security Initiative, I met some lady in another part of the world, somewhere in Asia, that asked that I mentor her, and we got talking, within the group, within BAT, and I just asked the question, and I said, how many other ladies are there, in your own space? And she said, there's quite a number of us. We just need guidance on how to navigate and do a couple of things. And that's when my idea was born. And I decided to raise my hand and say, I'm going to set up this thing. I'm going to take responsibility for a whole lot of things, and put things in order. But the most important thing for me was bringing all of the women together. So I began to ask questions. And then I realized that we didn't even know who the women were. And as embarrassing as it was at that time, we found out that we really were the minority, within the security team, because we did some mapping, as well. And then we discovered that the numbers were just, they were really poor, at that time. So there was a lot of focus, not just on, networking, mentoring, resource sharing, but also ensuring that we retain and attract talent. In the security industry, you've already said that it's a male-dominated field. A lot of women do not want to tread, into this environment at all. And somewhere along the line, most of them also often lose motivation, as well, marginalization, a whole lot of other things. So how do we ensure that we make security as attractive, as possible? This was something that no one thought that women could do, but we're conquering different fields. We have women doing just about everything, right now. Then when we talk about allyship, a lot of women have spoken about male allyship today, educating the men on biases, unconscious and conscious biases, and, raising awareness and teaching them how they can intentionally work around them. A couple of years ago, irrespective of where I was, if I'd said, especially in security, if I'd said, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm pregnant, I'd like to inform you in advance because I'd be going on maternity leave. At that point in time, whoever it is I was working for would be potentially looking for a replacement and not relief for me at that point in time, because that's it, I'm done. I probably have to start again, So educating men, on all these biases and how they can work around them. Also, the average individual, will first consider if you are a threat to him or her, and if you're a threat to his or her career development before deciding to help you otherwise. The sky is big enough for everyone. How are women, there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. How are women also getting in the way of other women? The elephant in the room has to be addressed. I created this employee resource group, with several objectives in mind, not just increasing strengths, helping women like the ones I met, think outside of the box. I've been very fortunate working with BAT, and I've been exposed to different opportunities, worked in different countries, met so many people with diverse cultures as well. How do we help these women think outside the box and also navigate through the challenging environment, not just by trying to keep up, but staying ahead, which is also very important. Examples of situations. This is the story of my life. So there's so many of them. I'm not even going to bore you with details. But when I started working in security, I started from private security before I crossed over to corporate. And there's several instances where I've had male clients, we've been exchanging emails or messages via Skype or text for weeks. And then we finally invite them to whatever office we were in at that point in time. And they say, oh yeah, I'm here to see Bola. We've been discussing over this project and this project. And I say, oh yeah, this is she. And over the next 2 to 5 seconds, you can see the judgmental look in their eyes where they're giving you the once over to say, it's a woman? How? And they're trying to decide at that point whether they want to do business with you or they change their minds. More often than not, at that point in time, the answer was, oh, we'll get back to you. And that was it. They just walked out the door and they never came back. Also venturing into the security field, either private or corporate, and rising through the ranks. There have been instances where I have been met with the obstacle where the men do not want to work or report to women. Yes, it's still a thing, but I'm consciously reminding myself as well that I was hired because of a special skill set that I have. I was hired because of the kind of value that I can bring to whatever team it is I'm joining, at that particular point in time. There's also, there's so many things. How do I navigate challenges related to my gender? Investing in others as well. I'm trying to pay it forward and pour into different people. Active engagement, for instance, of different perspectives, it would help me to develop functioning strategies as well, depending on the environment that I'm working in. And most importantly, while I'm developing others, I'm constantly working on myself as well and my capabilities. Yvonne said something amazing about, sunset and sunrise careers. I don't want to wake up one day and find out that, irrespective of whatever space I find myself in, I'm really not needed anymore because maybe I've created the perfect working environment. So what's next for me? We have to constantly, be on our toes as well. Whatever skill set it is you have, continue to hone it. Take advantage of every single opportunity and grab it with 2 hands because you never know where it might lead you to. That's pretty much it.
Thank you so much. I love how you were able to break that down, because when I was reading through your profile, that was one of the things that struck me, because it's not meeting women in security for me. I've always been very fascinated by that. I think it's fantastic. So we've come to the end of the questions. However, when we were planning this conversation or this fireside chat, we asked some of the audience members to collate some questions that we have for speakers. So before I come to the questions in the comment box, I have a couple of questions that we already received before we started this conversation. And one of the questions is directed to you, Shalape. The question is, what's the advice to a younger woman who wants to keep moving and just holding on even when they can hardly breathe when it comes to setting up their own business?
Okay, so if I hear you right, the question says a woman who, could you kindly take that?
So what's the advice to the younger woman who needs to keep moving and holding on even when they can barely breathe, especially when starting a business in Nigeria?
That sounds like a question I should ask right now. Does it ever feel lighter? Does it ever get, maybe in impact, if you look at business from an impact perspective, you get some relief. And that's why I feel like a fish in water with where I operate from now. I'm very, very big on impact. I'm impact oriented. And of course, impact should have commercial value for sustainability too. But then I understand, and trust me, there's no business. Every business has an impact angle, but not every, impact business can, not every impact business can be commercially viable, recall. So what I'll just say is, firstly, surround yourself. It's been overflogged on this conversation, particularly in terms of sponsors, mentors, and allies. Be deliberate in growing, um, a safety net of those. Be very deliberate. And don't be transactional with it, right? It's easier these days that you just say, oh, I'd like for you to be my mentor. And then that mentor has some challenges too. That sponsor has some needs to lead with value. Many times, I'll tell you, it's always been me working up with people to people that I've seen that I'd love for them to mentor, be a sponsor, to say, this is me, these are my competencies, these are my skills. If you need them, I am happy to volunteer, right? And you realize I've had people, I mean, I can mention names now, and they say, really, this is rare for them because people rarely come or lead with this. And please, where you promise, make sure that, you fulfill as much as you can as well. So reduce that transaction value in, mentorship, and that's where you can really build good relationships. So firstly, like I said, have that safety net, because trust me, I think it was one Nigerian musician that mentioned Dangote still dey find money. It is true, right? At that level of business, no matter how high it is, you still, or big it is perceived, you constantly need to keep going to the next level. The second thing is you might want to look at that business and subject it to thorough analysis, to look at its sustainability, so that you are not just, like they say, emptying water into a basket, right? Subject it to thorough analysis, get your models right, look at people, get people who can look you dead in the face and tell you the truth, nicely, constructively, so that you know quickly what you're in for. If you have a team, I would say that be very careful in, curating your team. And that starts with being a true leader yourself, right? I have encountered two different leaders. I've seen leaders that every time you see them, they are just bitter. They are complaining about their juror reports. They're complaining about staff. I saw them 4 years ago, was the same thing. Last year was the same thing, and it's a reflection of you probably need to check some things too. So because team is key to the success of your build, so you've got to really check that and check yourself too. There are tons of things. If this person doesn't mind, please feel free to reach out. I'm very responsive on my LinkedIn particularly, and let's continue the conversation. But trust me, yeah, it's beautiful to build. It's almost godlike, right? And if we are created in His image, it's one of those things God wants for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if you're listening in, please feel free to reach out to Sholabre via LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Ruth. I know today has been a very busy day for Ruth, and thank you so much for your time. We had people requesting for your presentation slides, and we're going to make that available to them as well. However, I have a question for you. One of the attendees said, how do I make myself more marketable and noticeable in any industry, especially the banking industry, when you're fresh out of the university?
Okay, thank you so much for the question, and it's quite interesting, So I remember so what I'm trying to do now is talk about my times and now the times today. At the time when I left school, there was no social media. You had to think about, how do I get a job, especially for those who were looking, But I know, so you go to the newspapers, you look into the papers, go and do tests, whatever it is. But these days, the world has transformed. So anybody who is fresh out of school must first and foremost be very active on social media. Why do I say so? Because there's so much going on in that space. Everything you need to know, you can find on Instagram, on LinkedIn, whatever it is. Opportunities are all over LinkedIn,
Thank you so much, Ruth. So again, if you're part of this conversation, visibility is key in growing your career. So we have 2 questions in the comment section for you, Yvonne, and I have one more here for Bola. So is it okay if I take your 2 questions at the same time, Yvonne, so that you can, yes, because I see we're running out of time. So I have a question here. I am keen to understand what are the different motivations for your career. You mentioned some women want flexibility and some are keen on impact. Are there other motivations? I'm in my early 30s and I have been thinking about what I want in my career going forward, keeping in mind the possibility of family obligations. That's the first question. The second question is it advisable to develop skills on the job, having no prior skills in that field to start with, but deep passion, basically? So, Yvonne, this is for you.
Yeah, I'll be quite quick. So I put something in the chat. I would reference that with the first question, but I will start with the second question because it's a build up on what Ruth said. So Ruth has practically answered the second question. I think the only part of it that I would ask is one of the things, in fact, 3 main mistakes I made early in my career when I had no skills and experiences was that, one, I wanted so bad to be, the first one is that I didn't have a plan. And that was when I realized, actually having a career plan is important. But I think I realized that it was, but I think I still put it off. And I was like, okay, let me just get a job. What do I know I can do? I'm quite intelligent, right? So if someone gives me paperwork, I can do it. I worked in the civil service for a year. All I did was paperwork civil service work is very interesting, by the way, but all I did was paperwork. I think I can carry it into the private sector and do that. So I identified what kind of skill that I could put into practice, but it didn't mean that I had a plan. So that's also different. And that's where the second mistake I made came in. So having a plan for me, no matter how difficult it is to come up with a plan, it's not that easy. I'm a career consultant and I work with first year, second year students, undergrads and master's, postgrad students. And having a career plan is not that easy to develop, but you must even attempt to have one. And one of the things that can help you with that is mentorship, coaching, speaking to people. I can't overemphasize the importance of the apprenticeship mindset. I know we don't talk about it enough now, but nobody's saying you have to do it the way we did it back then, where you have to learn under someone. But it's important. We call it I'm a practicing Christian, and the way we refer to it is invoking the wisdom of Eli. So the wisdom of someone who is so much more seasoned and experienced, and learning how to go to them for advice, learning how to work with them, seek some sort of informal mentorship relationship with them. And that's what eventually helped me later on, up until now that I've done like 10 years of my career. So that was very helpful. So attempt to have a plan. And then another mistake that I made was I wanted to be accepted, which meant I wanted to do something that could allow me access certain circles. That was a huge mistake. You can do certain things does not mean that that is what you should grow your career in. You can do certain things does not mean that that is the space for you. And before you know it, yes, use social media by all means to grow your visibility, but don't get trapped into the performance of the validation that comes from it. And then that you then don't seek depth and mastery in your field. The one thing that I said about me not having a tech career is that, yes, the world right now has a high demand for tech careers, but the world does not ignore mastery. The world they're not designed to ignore mastery at all. So if you be the best you can be in your field, and if you actually gain, even these tech career people, so many of them jump around a lot because they are all still fluff and no substance, because they haven't taken the time to gain mastery. So mastery is also very, very important. Yes, your passion can shine through. You can think through what is the one skill that you can start with, but you need to make sure once you get that one foot into the door and start as anything, even if it's executive assistant position, start thinking through, okay, what is my next step? What is my plan? Who do I need to talk to? Who can I learn under? When I learned from this mistake, I started volunteering. There's a woman who used to do very large coaching events for very senior women executives, and they would pay a lot of money. I could not afford that, but I would volunteer to be her assistant on the day, just so that I could tap in from the wisdom she was sharing with the executive women that I really wanted to be like at some point. So you have to learn to go through that humility and apprenticeship model to actually really learn and establish your roots and your foundation, because honestly, that's what God really wants for us. And then the first question, I put a checklist in the chat. Everyone can access it. This helped me mid-career for me, especially when I wanted to go back to school. Your work values checklist is what will help you all through life, because your work values will change as your life transitions, as you become a mom, as you become a wife, as you become any aspect of your life, become unmarried, any aspect of your life, move countries, whatever situation of your life that changes, your work values will change. And what the work values done, very briefly, it splits into three. You have your explicit work values, which extrinsic work values. We talk about what you want, like financial rewards. You want lifestyle values, which are like flexibility. Do you want to travel a lot on the job? Do you want to then you have intrinsic values. Do you want autonomy? Do you want creativity in your role? So once you do the checklist, you can assess yourself. I recommend doing it every couple of years. It helped me understand that I want to work in a large organization because they're the ones that can pay me the kind of money I want. I want to work in an organization that can afford to sponsor me to relocate at that time. It also made me understand the kind of educational opportunities I want to access. Flexible education is very important for me. I need to work and study. The values checklist helps you understand the kind of roles that if you want routine roles, it will help you understand that. If you want creative roles, if you want autonomy, it will help you understand that. And finally, so it helps you understand your motivation for a job. So I recommend you do the assessment yourself. If you want someone to help you, coach you through your assessment results, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm quite responsive there as well. And we can set up like a quick 20-30-minute chat and talk about it. And then finally, I think it's important for everyone to really ask themselves, what do I want to gain mastery in? And how deep do I want to grow myself? It's not just about remaining on the surface anymore, but how well can I do what I do? It's very important. And think of yourself as a plant, right? I love the plant metaphor because plants move towards light. Plant needs certain temperatures to grow. They need certain conditions to grow. But most importantly, when you give plants nutrients, it catalyzes their growth. What is that nutrient for you? Your nutrients can be coaching. Your nutrients can be a sponsor, like in Ruth's case. Your nutrients can be a mentor. Your nutrients can be going back to school. It can be changing, it can be dropping some friends in your life or leaving that relationship. It can be different things. So find out what the nutrient is for you and take it from there.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. You really went deep on that. At some point, I was going to say honorable. Should we turn off your mic? You know, when you were firing your shots at the people in tech, directed at people in tech. Thank you so much. So my final question is directed to Bola. So Bola, we have someone here that says she would like to start a career in security. What are the steps to take, the basic steps that she needs to take in order to excel in security? Right. Okay. I was gonna ask if you could help me. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's quite yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
first of all, I'm very, very glad to hear that someone on this call has an interest in security. But just so I'm clear, I work in the corporate physical aspect. I don't work in the cybersecurity field. I'm just putting it out there, right? The first step is what you've already embraced, which is the interest. The interest is fine. I don't want to echo what else everyone has said, but the same strategies can be applied, right? You've already recognized that you have an interest in venturing into a field where that's primarily male dominated. So you have to be ready as well. There's a couple of things you have to bear, in mind. We're women, we are superheroes, and no one can take that away from us, right? But it's also important for you to have guidance as well in order to navigate through this industry for several reasons. In my time, I didn't have that luxury, which is why a lot of us are coming together now to ask ourselves what we can do, to assist the other women and the leaders in the leaders in the new generation, or the emerging leaders. Guidance is key. Everyone's going by everyone is holding into Ruth's story about Adesu. Everyone needs an Adesua. I wasn't fortunate enough to have one. I started off in a period where everyone, I knew that I had to, or rather certain conditions had to be met before you achieved a certain milestone, at that point in time. Things are different now, things are easier. please take advantage of every network that comes your way. Whatever skill set it is you have right now, hone and develop that skill set. Navigating is never easy, but the most important things that I also need you to note are they will get to a certain stage. Starting off obviously isn't easy. There are lots of hurdles that have to be crossed. You need to have a very tough skin, as well. At some point, irrespective of whatever it is you have achieved, visibility is very important, and you're going to need, you're going to need support with achieving the desired level of visibility to take you to the next step, irrespective of where you are. Then you also have to continuously have renewed interest, which will serve as your motivation, as your source of motivation as well, amongst others. Stay dedicated to the impact that you want to also achieve or make in your own space, as well, because I need you to remember that at some point, you're not going to be doing this for just yourself. You're going to be doing it for just others, especially when you assume a position of leadership. Because at that point, you wouldn't be thinking of just yourself. Even when you're working as part of a team, you'll be responsible for others. There's cohesion, there's a whole lot of other things as well. But just remember that your renewed commitment to also making an impact. Have goals that you want to set. Make sure they are smart objectives. Make sure they're also realistic, as well. And the sky's your limit.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bola, for that. I hope you're listening as she has shared these tips. I think Ruth wanted to say something. Apologies. I think I missed that before Bola spoke. Is Ruth here? Okay, so apologies. I think she wanted to add to Yvonne's conversation. Okay, so we've come to the end of this fireside chat, and I would like to thank our lovely speakers, Bola Lowo, Yvonne Aloziobi, Chalabi Akimpolu, and Ruth Owujaye. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for the knowledge, the insight that you shared with every one of us. I have a lot. I mean, I have my notepad here, so I've been taking notes. Thank you so much. To all our attendees, I see women from South Africa, Namibia, Lagos. Thank you so much for taking out time to be with us and learn from this conversation. And finally, I would like to thank BAT West and Central Africa for this time, for making this possible. I don't know. I'm just full of gratitude. So thank you so much to everyone. And please, you can also connect with the speakers on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I mean, they're there. I had to Google them as well. I had to find their handles. So they're there. They're available. Send them DMs, connect with them, connect with everybody on this conversation. And we hope to see you next time. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of your week. This is from me and the entire HAR Network team. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. Bye.